No, if you want to. No, but if you want to, our company chair.
I'm making my speech on the board.
Which is probably baseball. So. Nothing. Just let one of the things that around, if you can.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. We will go ahead and call the regular April Board of Ed meeting to order. We'll start with introductions since there's several of us here. I'm Terry Powell.
Tina Ray Scott.
Kelsey Hartman.
Jamie Johnson.
Chris Stevens.
Ashley Dahlquist.
Alex Tim.
Elizabeth Scody.
Carissa Dahlquist.
Nola Miller.
Mark Hernandez. Jay
Val.
Warbach. Shane Warbach.
Tracy Schroeder.
Kelly McDiffin.
Valerie here. Heather Hunnis.
Kelsey Bremer.
Kelly Gentry.
Miles Gant.
Aaron Duff.
Bryce Johnson.
Looks like Dana Reddick just joined us as well. Oh, and online we have Marie Blythe and Mary Kay Myers. So welcome, everyone. We'll start with the consent agenda. And tonight's items are the approval of the agenda, approved minutes of previous meetings, financial report, pay bills, donations and gifts, several personnel items, employment, Sarah Mitchell, Council Grove Elementary School teacher, Sarah Cosgrove, Council Grove Junior Senior High School ELA teacher, Matthew Meals, Council Grove Junior Senior High School, Council Grove Elementary School music teacher, Brogan Humphrey, Council Grove High School head wrestling coach, Tina McGyver, Council Grove Junior Senior High School librarian, and resignations of Samantha Acevedo, Council Grove Elementary School preschool aide, and Misty Hilton, Council Grove Junior Senior High School aide. Anything there anybody like to see removed from the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move we approve the.
Oh, before you do that,
I'm
sorry to stop you.
pause.
On the agenda, we're also going to add an executive session at the very end for student information.
With an action item afterwards.
Okay.
Great.
So now,
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda with the addition. Second.
moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda with the addition. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? So passed. Next stop is the patron forum. Anybody from the public that wants to address the board this evening? How awkward long do I wait? All right, hearing none. Spotlight on education. Carissa, I think this is you. That's fine. Move whatever you need to.
Yeah. I'll try not to walk behind you. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Imagine monopolies, mergers, price gouging, and dominated markets. Sounds like the Gilded Age of the late 1800s, but monopolies don't exist anymore since they were all broken up a long time ago, right? What if I told you that there is still an industry today dominated by monopolies and that it threatens our most vital food systems? Beef consumption in the United States has steadily increased for several years now, and so have prices. On average, a pound of beef costs 20% more than it did a year ago today. Unfortunately, ranchers aren't seeing the same rise in prices. Today, I'll discuss the monopoly that the big four meatpacking companies hold on the beef industry and explain how accomplishing the FBLA goal of developing competent, aggressive business leadership can help us solve this problem. The four largest packing companies in the United States are Cargill, Tyson Foods, JBS, and National Beef Packing. After a wave of mergers in the 1980s and 90s, they have come to hold over 80% of the market, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. They have used this power to exploit both producers and consumers. To understand how this happened, we need to start with the ranchers who raise the cattle. These ranchers have a perishable good. Once their cattle are market ready, every extra day on feed adds cost and lowers quality. This means that they have no choice but to accept what they are offered at the sale barn. On sale day, feeders purchase cattle, which they will feed to slaughter weight and then sell to the packing company to be harvested. Most feeders have private contracts with packing companies, as opposed to the public sales that occur between feeders and ranchers. This allows for packers to lock in large numbers of cattle at prices they impose and keep the deal hidden from the public eye, according to the New York Times. Packers are constantly pushing lower prices, and feeders do the same to ranchers to avoid losing profit. Prices fluctuate, but ranchers currently get somewhere around $1.50 a pound, which is often too low for them to break even. This makes it especially difficult for smaller producers like myself, who rely on 1 or 2 sale days for their entire year's profit. Consumers, on the other hand, are paying record prices at around $4 a pound for ground beef, and that price increases for any higher quality cut of meat. Beef prices are driving the inflation that's growing around the country. So with consumers paying over $4 a pound, with producers receiving less than a third of that, where are all the extra profits going? Of course, the grocery stores and the feeders both take a cut, but ultimately, the answer is the packers. United States Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack recalls speaking to a producer who lost $150 per head he sold, while the packing company profited over $1,800. The United States government does have the power to step in and break up these monopolies using antitrust laws. According to the Federal Trade Commission, which is an independent agency in the United States government whose principal purpose is to enforce antitrust laws and protect consumers, there are 3 important acts to remember: the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Federal Trade Commission Act, and the Clayton Act. Together, they outlaw every contract, combination, conspiracy, and restraint of trade, and monopolization, attempted monopolization, and conspiracy or combination to monopolize. Instead of enforcing these laws directly, which would more quickly begin to resolve this problem, the Biden administration recently announced that they would use $1 billion from the American Rescue Plan to subsidize and encourage smaller processing companies. The alternative solution that has proven successful and the current administration is banking on is producers having their cattle processed at local locker plants and marketing the product directly to the consumer. This cuts out the middleman and increases consumer confidence in the product, but it requires entrepreneurs willing to take the risk of starting a new business and challenging these traditional systems. We need industry leaders to step up, take advantage of the current support, and challenge these big companies until further action can be taken to break up these monopolies. Whether that's starting new processing companies or advocating for producers and lobbying for change, we need people to lead us out of this problem. Youth development programs like FBLA can help create well-spoken, economically aware leaders to do so. All in all, the monopoly the big 4 meatpacking companies hold is straining our food system and hurting both producers and consumers. So far, the government has failed to step in and break up these monopolies, but competent, aggressive business leadership can help solve this problem by challenging big companies and advocating for change. As producers and consumers, we can also work to solve this problem by buying and selling beef locally, bypassing the larger system and shortening our food supply chains. If we can do so and break up the meatpacking monopolies, we can hopefully prevent history from repeating itself again. Thank you.
Can you give us some context about your speech and why you're giving it, what it's about, and where you're going with it?
Yeah, I gave this speech. I've given it several places. I gave it at 4-H, but most recently I've given it at our FBLA state competition, and I placed first in the state with it, and I qualified to go to the national conference in Chicago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, do you have anything you want to add?
So I guess from that, with Carissa, we had 9 others that qualified for nationals this summer in Chicago. I'll let them introduce themselves, that are the ones that are here, and they'll tell you what event they qualified in. Sure. Be the freshman.
I'm Cassie, like I said, and I qualified in introduction to public speaking.
Alex Tim, political science.
Liz Muschietti, and I placed second in healthcare administration.
Yeah, say your
Okay. I'm Carissa again. I qualified in public speaking, obviously, job interview, and hospitality and event management.
Congratulations.
And I placed in entrepreneurship this year.
The 5 of you attending nationals?
There's 4 more.
And then, yeah. So we've got Eli, he placed first in economics. We have, I can't, Jessica Filkin, she qualified in 2 events, hospitality management with Carissa and then spreadsheet. We have Jude Cormanic and Zeke Moore, they qualified in digital video production. Eli also placed second in computer problem solving. But we have a total of 10 that have actually qualified for nationals. The hard part people that qualify in more than one thing have to choose what event they want to compete in at nationals. So like Krista will only be able to do one thing. And when you're in it with a team, sometimes you have to leave your team members. So actually Eli and Miles both qualified in entrepreneurship, but I think Eli's gonna probably choose economics. They range from objective tests to entrepreneurship had an objective test, they made top 8, and then they had a scenario and they had to present that scenario. Carissa and Cassidy, they had pre-written speeches that they had memorized and they performed. Miles also competed in like impromptu where he got the topic and went in and he was in the top 10. And what else? The job interview, Carissa placed first in job interview as well, where she put together her resume and a application letter, her cover letter, and interviewed for that too. So there's a wide variety of different events that they get to compete in.
You like topped in help desk too, right?
Yeah, Eli did get top 10 in help desk. Yeah, he qualified in multiple events as well. But we had a pretty good showing. It makes you feel good after the first time being in person after a few years, and the excitement of the kids getting to go on stage. We made a point to stay for awards because the kids being allowed to go on stage and get those awards is pretty fun, and sometimes they're nervous and it's good for them, I guess. I guess for me, kind of an outlook on the trip, I think we included some costs that I sent, and I guess the downfall to all of this positive news is it's gonna cost over $900 per student for us to attend. And the last time in 2019, when we attended in person, registration for just the conference cost us $120. This year, for us just to attend the conference, they raised it to $195. So that in itself, it's pretty steep that it gets hard for us to, make ends meet on that part. And I, as an advisor, it's kind of always been my rule. I require the students to make like $150 deposit when we're first starting this process, because I want to know that them and their parents are committed and that they're not just going to not show up on us or something or change, oh, we've got family vacation. No, this is a commitment that we're going to do in the summertime. So I require the kids to make a deposit to show that and at least get everybody on the same page. From you all, I guess we're looking for if you'll approve our out-of-state travel _1, and hopefully for some financial support for the kids, and then for my advisor expenses. We do plan to fundraise, and just so you all are aware, anytime I've ever taken a trip like this, I never use district funds to pay for fun activities. Those fun activities come out of solely of what we fundraise and money the kids and/or pay for. So I mean, as you know, 195 of it is just for registration itself. So it's not like it'll be pretty. We won't use district money, I guess, that is given to us or for fun and enjoyment, I guess, is all I want.
Just being at the conference is so.
It is fun being there, and I always enjoy, like, the kids don't sometimes like it, but I make them go watch finals. Like if they didn't make finals of an event, I make them go watch, because that's the best learning experience, to see what it takes to get to that next level. We talk a lot at our state conference. Sometimes first time people don't wear the whole full-blown suit. And I said, it's okay if you don't, but when you go to nationals, you'll be the odd man out if you're not in a suit. And that's just the way it is. And it's good for them to see that and to be exposed to it. But I have them watch finals, because I think you can learn, and I learn a lot as an advisor. And I think the kids learn a lot as things to improve on, and it's a way for them to get better at competing, I guess.
You want to jump down to #1? That way when they come back to us, since we already talked about it, or do you want to wait?
Let's wait.
Okay.
Let's just run through it. I don't think any of this will take very long.
So thank you for sharing your speech.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Thank
it's
you.
awesome. Thanks for giving us a taste of what you guys are going to be doing. It's fantastic. Good work.
All right, moving on then to reports. Anything anybody would like to add? We'll start. Dana, anything? It's- Not saying it's a bad thing, it's just a different thing. You've been in the spotlight for the last 2.5 years. So, Mr. Dornbos? Nope. Mr. McGiffin? You don't have any opportunities left.
Don't encourage me.
It's 2-3. Chris? Bryce? Aaron?
I just got a couple things real quick. I want to give you an update on our track situation. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Hellas came in. It had an issue with all the new grading that we've done and the new cement that was added down there. Anytime you do that, you create some environmental concerns and drainage issues. We had some water pooling on the track down on the starting gate for the 100 down here on the chute that comes out this way. So basically, all the water that we have now created by adding this concrete and regrading this parking lot was running down into here and then flowing over on the track, flowing onto the turf. So Hellas came in, and if you'll notice, they did some major improvements. We're going to see how they work. First, they regraded this whole area. As you can see now, it's all cleaned up. That wasn't graded and landscaped like that was before. They added all this new gravel and cleaned out the drainage ditch for the riprap that drains down through past the tennis courts down into the old creek bed or river bed there. And then they came in and added a French drain on this part of the stadium side, on the home side where the concrete was added for the bleachers. So they added a French drain there. And they're hoping that will solve, you guys don't want to see that. Let's see. Then they added this French drain on the outside. So all this new gravel that goes all the way along is a submerged French drain. Also added the drain on the other side of the concrete. We're anticipating that's going to take care of most of the problem. They're going to come back and see how that does, and if we need to address the track itself, they will. So again, it goes back to service inexpensive is priceless. You know, within a phone call, within 48 hours, they had a crew on site assessing the problem, putting a plan together, and then they worked with us on our schedule to come in and do this work when it wasn't disrupting either football season or track season and whatnot, and when the weather cooperated. So kudos to Hellas for taking care of it. I think we got the problem solved. We'll see how it comes in the future. If we get any more heavy rains, we'll keep assessing it. But they did a water test on it and a drainage test, and they think they've got it fixed. And we'll continue to monitor it, but they're committed to fixing it. So that was good news. Real quick on personnel update. Any questions on the track? Personnel update. I think we're pretty much full. We've got every position filled now at the elementary and at the high school now after tonight. Is that correct? Well, sped. Not discounting, not well, just sped, but that goes through the co-op. So we have filled USD 417 positions, and now the co-op is employed through Emporia 251. So we still have to fill the high school sped position. That's correct. Any questions on personnel? And then the last thing real quick, I got some other stuff later on here, but we did receive our district data from the ESU teacher retention survey that they put out statewide. And we did have 41 of our teachers participate, which was over half, which is a good number. We got some good data that we looked through on the admin meeting today, and we'll continue to use some of that data in our KISA process and then our family engagement process as well. So good stuff there. So appreciate the teachers who took the time to complete that survey for the ESU.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Miles, you have anything? Board members?
Jamie and I enjoyed our opportunity to go with Dr. Doty to San Diego. What a phenomenal opportunity to be again in public with people for these events that have been canceled for the past couple of years, and just an overabundance amount of wealth and knowledge. And while I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, knowing that everybody's in the same boats and having the same issues and conversations that we are, we heard that no matter the size of the district, it seems to be the same across the board, no matter what state you live in. So I'll just say ditto.
Okay. Anybody else? Board members, anything? In that awkward amount of time. All right, we'll move on then to information items, staff, student, coaches, handbooks.
So one addition to that real quick, this is your chance to review and you'll approve at the next meeting. One addition that we discovered this morning in our admin meeting was that During COVID in our mitigation policies, we didn't allow outside food in. And we found that based on the wellness recommendation from the state and locally, that's probably a process we should continue just for food safety issues with allergies and food prepared safety issues for other issues. We're going to write that in. So the recommendation is to add a paragraph under basically food guidelines that says food brought by students or parents for birthdays or other concessions, classroom events, parties must be store bought. And we highly recommend and encourage nutrition labels to be available for items that are brought in. Homemade items will not be allowed due to allergies and other medical concerns. Now we will continue to allow homemade items for banquets and concession stands because that can be posted as a parent choice to walk up where they choose to buy that item or not. Whereas in a classroom, a parent's not there to protect their child or say no to that if they're not comfortable with that for whether it's food allergies or whatnot. So Dana drafted up a paragraph today for that will be included in those handbooks.
Any questions or comments on the handbooks at this point? Again, we've got about a month here to review those. So moving on to action items, FBLA trip and the national conference.
So normally in the past, what the district has done, and looking back at precedents set in the past, the district contributes $2,000 for each national conference for the organization. So that would be where you lump basically your expenses together, whatever it may be, and then the district would contribute $2,000 to that. We did talk about if you choose to drive, use of a district vehicle would not come out of that. So you could take the district vehicles and that would not be charged at that $2,000. So that'd be on top of that if you chose to drive through that. You chose to fly, then that just part of your expenses that would be added into that $2,000 contribution. Does that sound normal to whatever? That's what Bryce and I kind of looked back and found, and does that sound pretty consistent with the past? Yeah.
Does that 2,000 include me, or am I separate from that 2,000?
It'd be for all total expenses. Yeah. Questions on that?
Thoughts? Anybody? All right, I'll go. I'll make a motion that we approve the FBLA National Conference trip with the board expense of $2,000 plus a vehicle or vehicle of transportation. Vehicle transportation.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the FBLA national trip with those costs as we just discussed. Discussion on that item? Anyone? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? So passed. Have a great trip.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing a report when you guys get back. All right, next action item, school bus purchasing. This will be a little more than the last one, I'm guessing. Bryce?
Mrs. Miller, you guys don't have to hang out. You guys want to- We don't mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Yeah.
So last year, we were awarded a similar rebate through the state, through KDHE. Same program, just administered by the state. So this is the federal version of that, direct from the EPA school bus rebate program. And again, we were awarded $55,000. Last year, we got $60,000 and purchased 3 buses with that, which made one of the buses pretty much free. We didn't buy any buses the year before that because the pandemic hit and we thought we could limp along for another year. We didn't know if we'd be back in person when school started in the fall. So we held off on purchases that year. And then the year before that was my first year and we bought 2 off-lease buses, which is something Aaron and I wanted to start doing after, I don't know how many years before we purchased one new bus per year at about $90,000. And these off-lease buses are 60, they were 60, now they're closer to 65, 67. We had a lot of old buses and the average age of our fleet was not great. So we wanted to replace more buses
Did you share this with them?
quicker.
Here's a good article that Bryce found, and I'll let him explain to you, but there's some good data in there. It talks about things like how old is too old for a school bus, right? I mean, there's statutory guidance about it can't be more than 25 years old.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's really no guidance. And that looks so different whether you're in Shawnee Mission, Kansas, where you're driving on blacktop every day versus Morris County, Kansas, where you're driving on gravel roads every day. So a lot of variation in that. So there's a good article with some data he found in here. It's pretty.
And I'd always thought 20 years, that's about the age of when they're falling to pieces, and we're having to use our spare buses a lot during the year because they're getting pulled out of service for maintenance issues. And this is School Bus Fleet Magazine. It's just Matt Weaver, our mechanic, and I both get this, and he actually found this information. The average school bus retirement age, this was just a survey done with a bunch of school districts, and so the average age is 15.3 years. These three buses that we're wanting to replace are 20 years, 17 years, and 16 years old. And maybe one of them we could get another year, maybe two out of, but it's worth $1,000 to $2,000 at the end of that. And we won't have this money from the rebate program to purchase another one. So that's why we're recommending that we purchase 3 buses and then hold off on purchases for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years. Put together this chart to kind of compare the cost of what our off-lease purchasing with these rebates versus buying new. Can I share? Versus buying new buses, and I included the rebates in the new bus purchasing program. So this was my first year with the 2 off-lease buses, and or sorry, the blue line is the off-lease bus purchasing plan. So you can see we didn't buy any buses this year, then we bought 3 and we're asking to buy 3 more. That's going to put us $71,000 over what we would have spent on 4 buses. We will have replaced 8 buses at this point. And then if we hold off on purchasing for 2 years, which I think we can easily do, maybe 3 years, we'll have saved about $130,000 and purchased 2 more buses than we otherwise would have. We hold off for 3 years, we save about $200,000. And we're not seeing a lot of issues with these buses we're buying that are coming off lease. They've lost some of their warranties, but any repairs that we've had to make are minor, and we know they're not lemons because they're coming in with 20 to 30,000 miles, and they've proven to be good buses.
Kudos to Virgil and Matt now for, use your own personal vehicle for 20 years on the abuse they take on these roads. That's pretty phenomenal. They keep them running, even though they're a diesel platform, but that's still, there's a lot of work that goes into keeping those buses going like they do. So kudos to Virgil in the past and Matt now for the work they do behind the scenes.
Virgil was excellent and Matt is also excellent. He's doing a really great job.
So that's good. Bryce got a good chart here. It's a no-brainer. Obviously we're 3 buses ahead and $200,000 ahead along with like going off lease route and then capitalizing on the EPA grant. It's just kind of a no-brainer to do.
And it looks like Midwest is the,
It was the cheapest bid.
yeah.
A
Which,
couple thousand.
And they're Thomas, which is what
The rest
we
of our
were
fleet,
hoping for, yes.
right. Yeah,
Consistency on fleet to us is extremely important because it's easier to inventory parts, easier to buy software to work on those buses when you have one brand.
Any questions about the numbers or the program? I should have shared this last summer, few drivers, and Matt and I, we went to Emporia, and part of the program is you have to destroy the buses and get photographic evidence. But we took videos and all sorts of, we were there all day watching them just destroy the 3 buses. They took this claw machine and just ripped it apart, and they're just picking it way up in the air and dropping it and smashing it. They pick up a huge weight and drop it on the engine. It was pretty cool.
We need to attend that next.
Yeah, so
Hey, Bryce,
Yeah.
I hope you can hear me. I'm probably cutting up, but I just wanted to tell you thank you for being conscientious of our resources and staying on top of this. I know it's probably not the most glamorous detail within the district, but this is also just another way that we're ensuring that we're doing the right thing here. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. President, I move we approve the purchase of 3 used school buses assisted by the funds awarded to the district through the EPA's Dura School Bus Rebates Program with the quote from Midwest Bus Sales. I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded that we approve the purchase of the 3 school buses assisted by the funds awarded to the district through the EPA DERA School Bus Rebates Program. Discussion on that item. Just so that it's on the record, I'm going to throw out there that these are going to, the bid was for $67,443 per bus. These are off-lease buses. I'm just trying to make sure that we've got everything that we need to out there. So I'll shut up and any discussion on that item.
I would just like to point out that the one that was 97,000.
Yeah, one of the vendors did not have any used buses in their inventory, which the Thomas vendor said that he never thought they'd be close to running out, and just the market's so crazy, like every other vehicle market, that he said he still had plenty of the kind that we want, so he's gonna reserve the ones with the lowest mileage and some good ones for us. But yeah, it's tough to get anything these days.
Thank you for also having that relationship. It's always nice to have that vendor relationship.
All right, any other discussion on this item? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? So passed. All right, discussion items, esports.
Mr. Dormouse, this year.
Ms. Schroeder and I wanted to come to you tonight and just present. We're not asking for action yet tonight, but just present some information on the potential of adding an esports program at the high school. It would be a lot like when we added the trap team. Although the trap team is not officially a part of the school, it uses our name. The esports program would be an official part of our school. It's something that we're starting to see a lot of other schools get into. A few weeks ago at the KIAAA conference, it was even brought up as something that Keisha will most likely eventually look at, whether that be at the same level as athletic competitions or maybe at a different level. It's something that they're looking at. So it's something that we really as a school need to be on the front end of. It's also something that we think we can reach another group of students that maybe we're not reaching right now, along with other students that we have. We want to approach it just like we did with the trap team. You know, you can add a bunch of activities, but eventually you don't have enough kids to fill all the activities. So the primary goal right now would be that any time that we spend with it would be outside of our current sports practices, so that our student athletes can also be a part of the esports program. And so really we want to get you information, but it's something we really feel is probably an important step for our students. And like I said, we engage another group of our students. I'll let Tracy spend some time talking about. She's done the research. There's different platforms. Right now, we think they're at the national level. There's not, you know, if Keisha were to get involved, there may be a specific platform that's just at the state level. But Tracy's done the research, so I'm going to let her spend some time telling you about it.
So be warned, like, a lot of the answers to any questions that you might have are, it's a great question. There's like
But while she's getting that set up, some of the questions we're already looking at that we have to deal with is, number one, networking issues, which we'll get Tori involved in that, because there's some security issues when you bring gaming systems in. What gaming systems we can allow, which gaming systems we can't allow. Do we Do we have students bring their own gaming systems in? Do you purchase them? The activities directors I've talked to, the kids provide their own. But those are some of the questions that we're just kind of starting this process and trying to figure out.
So everybody that I have talked to does it a little bit differently. And so honestly, like when I figure out what this might look like, there's a lot of different paths that we could take. And I feel like it's going to be something that could evolve from what we started with. Right now, I've talked to some kids about this just to kind of get an idea of what they would think about different scenarios and different things. And they're like, oh, are they going to build us a new edition for this? No, probably not. And so it's something that a lot of kids are really interested in. And I can't find the link. There it is. Nope, that's the map.
See the Zoom link.
Yes, thank you. And I will share. So I just kind of have some.
Recording in progress.
Mute your computer.
My speaker's on.
Okay.
Yeah, mute your microphone.
There it is.
There you go. And then turn your volume.
The volume's up. What happened?
This is one of the first events.
So speaking of technology. Okay. So here's kind of a place. What do I have?
Miles comes to the rescue.
I think esports is just video games in general. Gaming.
It's gaming.
It's just gaming in general. It's very big overseas.
Do you have your,
So my husband says.
There are several colleges in the state of Kansas that'll give you a full ride scholarship if you're a gamer.
do you have your YouTube over?
Halo national champion lived on my dorm floor and I thought he was the coolest thing ever.
No, that one's good. Like using the app. Is the, that coming out, is the sound coming out of your speaker?
It's coming out of her.
Is your,
There's two places here.
yeah, go down the bottom right hand side. And
She goes to competition.
Hey, talk amongst yourself. Miles, tell some jokes.
Yeah, how ugly things can get.
All these kids are mocked on second thought. Why is it the donut holes?
They used to have.
Why did the
Why
did the donut
So
workers
they used to
quit the
connect
job at
their
the factory?
Xboxes from different rooms to rooms.
You set up a
cords so they could play each other.
Just for those of us who are a little more advanced in age, can you just give us an overview of what, and maybe that's what she's about to do. But what do you mean by esports?
So esports basically is gaming.
Yeah.
It would provide a platform. One of the nice things, our kids are gaming as it is.
Sure.
And so one of the nice things is it would provide a monitor platform for gaming. The games would have to be approved. They've got, the companies, they have filters. They rate the games because, there's games that, you'll give examples of some of the games they play, but.
Yeah, so there's two, so right now, there's 3 states that have state competitions like what Keisha's kind of looking at. And that's just growing. There's 2 right now in talks and that will probably happen next year. So it's something that other states are doing and I probably see that happening here as well, especially if Keisha's already talking about it. if you do not have a state-sponsored platform, there's two really kind of main platforms that this occurs on. The first one is the High School Esports League, and the second one is the Play BS. And they're two just separate, basically separate companies that host those tournaments and host those competitions. So it's a national thing. So it wouldn't just be kids are competing against kids in Kansas. It would be kids competing in lots of other places. There's some market differences between them, specifically the games. The Play BS has partnered with Nintendo and also Sony, and so that's why they have some of those more popular games. The people that I have talked to use both. It just kind of depends on what your students are interested in and what particular game they want to play. Everything is set up fairly similarly. Basically, you log into their server, they have your game, they have so if you know anything about games, like you can level up and you can get specific items in your game, that is pretty much stripped down. So you start at this level, whatever level you start at. So everybody's kind of on a level playing field. So that kind of takes out some of the monetary advantages with that. So you can kind of see those are the particular games that they play. And the thing that one of the big questions is, like, you know, a lot of them are shooter games. So they're in-person shooter games. And they are rated, and there are parent reforms and privacy forms that are required. Kansas isn't so big on that, but states like New York and New Jersey, and especially the East in California, you know, that's a really big thing. Does your parent know that you're doing this? And they have to have that on file. So that's something that would be a parent permission type thing. You know, do you know that your child is playing this game? And honestly, if you're not already playing that game, you're probably not going to do this. This is somebody like the kids that have talked to me is like, oh, I play this game all the time. Can we make a team? So that's kind of where that is. But that gives you an idea of what those particular games are for those different platforms. So each one of these has a spring and fall season. And so what that looks like for us is kind of up in the air again at this point. Most of the people that I have talked to focus on one, like they open it up for their kids in both, but like their fall is their season. So when you think about like a sport, you know, football happens in the fall, but you also do some stuff in the spring for that. So that's kind of the model that I think is probably the best, is focus on one particular season and then open it up for kids that want to do it. So they set up the game, whichever game that you are playing. There's a day that you log in with your team and you go against other teams. Usually the games take about 20 minutes, so it's not like a 3-hour block of time that you have to participate in this at all. This is what a season looks like for, this is the HSEL. So this is kind of what it looks like. You have 3 or 4 weeks of kind of pre-season where you log in and figure out where the server is, how to log into the server, how to play the game with other people on this particular platform. And then they have, it's usually 8 weeks. That's kind of, it's been 6, it's been 8, it's been 10. It just kind of depends. It's been varied every year. And so once a week you log in and you play your game, and like that's pretty much your competition. If you miss that day, both of them have ways, typically on Saturday or Sunday, that you can make that game up. So if for whatever reason on Tuesday your team can't log in to play, Saturday you can come in and make that up and go from there. So that's kind of what that looks like. Cost-wise kind of varies. The HSEL is significantly cheaper, but each one of them has like an individual pass. So if you have one student that wants to do this, this is the cost per student. It's pretty much open, but then they also have like a season pass. So if the season pass is $850, and so if you had 22 students, that would be like the benchmark for that particular one. And then they have like a full year one. So they have it per season and they have it per year. Play BS is very similar. They actually have Title I costs for that. One of the things that I am finding is that there's a lot of grants. There's a lot of funds to help students do this, which is kind of amazing. There's just a lot of money that goes into this, whether it's to help the kids play or to find consoles or materials, whatever it is that you need for that.
Tracy, what does Title I mean?
Hmm?
What does Title I mean?
So this is the pricing per plan for your school.
So
But if you're a Title I
I
school, it's a different price
Ah.
for that. And I have talked to them and that's also negotiable. So if that is something that we would look into, rural schools especially tend to get a discount with that when you first start out.
Okay.
So that's something this is just a really huge thing and it's just getting bigger. There was a thing online, like more people watch this than the NFL. But it's kind of under radar, and if you don't watch it, you have no idea that that's going on. But if you talk to the kids, they're watching streamers all the time. Like that's what they're doing. So it's kind of fascinating to look into that. My big question was how to monitor it. So network-wise, we're not really getting a clear picture of what this would look like with our network. I've talked to Jake a few times about what we would have to do. And his idea is just to have like a subset of our internet where the kids could connect if they needed to come in to do it. Most people that have set this up have their kids playing at home. And honestly, I think that would be where we would start, just because they have their machines, they have everything there, and they know how to connect to that. Monitoring wise, I was really uncomfortable with that, like just turning them loose and saying, go play on it. If you've ever played a game online, you know, it can get kind of nasty. And so we kind of had the idea that we would either set up as a Twitch channel or a Discord channel. And so as you were logged into your game, everybody logs into the Twitch and you stream your game so everybody can see it. And then you can kind of, I think that's the best way that I found to monitor that from home. Kids know more about that than I do, but we're working on that. So that's kind of where I am with how this would be monitored and how we would set that up to start with. Ideally, we would have kids, it would be something that they would be able to come in and do in the building with everybody there, because it's just more fun. Like if you're playing your game, it's more fun to be in the room with the people you're playing. But there's a lot of network discussions that we have to figure out what that would look like. I don't know. Those are kind of the big questions that I had when I was looking at this. Do you guys have any?
So what kind of, is it a PS4? Is it Xbox?
Yes.
Is it PlayStation? Is it
Well,
all of them?
that's-
Depends on which game.
Yeah,
That's one of the things we're having to work through also though on the network. There's some debate right now about whether all consoles could actually be used with the network, just because, which is why a lot of the schools are allowing kids to play from home because of the security. Some consoles don't connect well, or we can't secure better than others. But we still have to work through all that. Those are things that,
So if you did it here on site, would kids just bring their own console?
yes.
Or use grant money to purchase.
Right. Yes.
We're kind of like at the tip of the iceberg on all of this stuff right now. Tori and Jake have been helpful in trying to learn the networking side of it, but really basically we're at a point, like if we're going to go further with this, we just need to see if we're going to have approval to do that, because it's going to take a lot of policy writing and how do we handle the network where we play. How do you handle a coach for it?
So basically, you just ask if there's a pulse to move forward and keep exploring it, bring back more information.
Yeah, quite a bit.
So-
Interest.
So Terry, are they asking for, do we need to make a motion around that or asking for approval? I'll
Oh,
tell you.
I think right now, all they want is a nod of the head, mostly saying that we're okay with it moving forward in discussion mode and answer any questions that we might have at this point. Am I right?
Yeah, and I'd throw out, if you're having doubt about this, this is another one of those things. We had a student come and talk about video game programming. We have kids that are starting to look at careers and stuff like this. So this only helps encourage them down their path. I know we've had a former student that went to a university in Kansas and helped set up an esports program. And I know just watching his path through college, it helped him kind of take off.
Yeah.
So there is some I know the big question is, well, it's video games. And we don't want kids being less active. Well, this is a real career path for kids. And so I really think you're helping push some of those students down that career path that were questioning.
There's a lot
Well,
of colleges.
Oh, sorry, Tracy. I just was going to tell you that I actually know an esports coach and a whole program. So if there's any way I can help connect you, I'd be glad to. And the other thing I was going to say to Jay is that Kane went to Pratt Community College and they offer scholarships for this to attend college there. So colleges are embracing this. Kids have opportunities in this way. And whether we understand it or not, to me, doesn't really matter. It's what they do. And so I'm thankful that you're bringing this up. So thank you.
One of the things I've, when you talk about the colleges, there's scholarships at most colleges now for this. And one of the things that we can help those kids that get those scholarships, they've got to learn how to do it responsibly now so that it doesn't, because the alternative is they get to college, now I get to do the gaming, and now there are some problems with how do you handle that in your class load. So if we can add it now, we'll help the.
And that social emotional piece, that's kind of interesting because there's a lot of research into it. Like the gaming companies, like when you talk about Nintendo, you talk about Microsoft and Sony, they're putting a lot of money into this and they've done a lot of research into the whole social emotional part of that. There's curriculum that you can get with this. Like this is something that people are adding as classes. And so it's a part of like, here's how you deal with, I guess is a better way to put it. But they're actually putting that into like our Kansas Can and our things that we're looking at with that social emotional piece.
How do you handle the interactions and how do you handle the managing your time appropriately?
Yes. Continue to answer your question that any room that I have like a show of hands of like interest, at least half of the hands go up, which terrifies me.
Interest
A little
will not
bit.
be an issue on this.
Yeah, interest is not gonna be a problem. There's a lot of kids. interested.
Tracy, I was going to say that you might prepare yourself that you're going to have a much greater interest than you think.
I have kids in my second hour who are counting down to the board meeting because they knew I was coming to talk about this. I'm like, Mr. Schroeder, it's today. I'm like, I know. But they're like, do you think we'll know tomorrow? I don't think we'll know tomorrow, guys. But we should. They're going to tell us, right? I don't think so. But it's there. Yeah. But the interest is there. That's awesome. That's awesome.
All right, any other thoughts, questions?
Miles.
You really think Twitch and Discord are going to be the best ways to monitor that?
I have no idea, but if you have any suggestions, I would absolutely love to hear them.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
I have a couple ideas.
I would love to hear them because this is just kind of, this is a way that everybody can be in the same place at the same time. And I can see it as well. That was where I'm going with those two. See you all.
So instead of you just having 11 days left, you gotta come back and do another year. So you
Oh, I wish.
game with us.
I'll tell you, my seniors are
With
upset.
COVID
Yeah,
year of
we
high
are.
school.
I've got seniors that is like, why is this just not coming?
All right,
Lot going
so
on.
I've seen a lot of heads nod here. Can we turn the videos back on just a second? Mary Kay, you okay with this? Based on your comments? Marie, any concerns here that you want to voice?
You're muted, Ray.
Yeah, Marie, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
About that.
There you go. There you go.
I know that Mrs. Gentry is going to talk to us about how our test scores have gone down. So I think we need to keep that in mind.
Okay.
I actually think it could have the opposite effect. But we'd have to talk about how to do that intentionally.
I think the important thing about that is we need a good plan for
Yes.
when it's allowed, and how much time's allowed. You know, this won't be just them, you know, they'll play games on their own at home, but there will be a set practice time that you know, we're not gonna have them up there all hours of the night. You know, we want to have a very structured, I say structured, there's gonna be a little bit of looseness to that because they can practice at home and they can play from home, but I think we need to take that just into account in how we set the program up, how we monitor the program and just keep the structure knowing that.
Very much like any other curricular
The other
activity.
thing is, you know, if it becomes a CASHA sport, and I don't know if that's a year away or 5 years away, but we can also tie eligibility to this, just like we do our current athletic programs. And we can attach that whether it's a CASHA sport or not. So,
Maybe it could become an incentive.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah.
right.
I think this will be a good tool that will help some parents navigate the battle at home for studying and whatnot, but it also, we need to communicate so parents understand what the parameters are, so it's not used as an excuse to be online playing at our expense. So it can be a good tool, just used correctly.
And the people that I have talked to, like, when you say incentive, like, this is an incentive for kids that don't have a lot of incentive. The kids that this pulls in, now it pulls in like all kinds of kids, but some of the kids that it does pull in aren't necessarily those ones that are involved in anything else and not really interested in school. And again, this is like anecdotal evidence from these other coaches. But they've seen a difference in a lot of those students. Because it pulls, it's something for them to do and be involved in.
And connect them to their community and
Right.
school.
Especially if we could get to where they could do it on site too, not just.
Exactly.
We're hoping to reach a group of students that we're currently not reaching. We'll reach a bunch of them that we are reaching, but if we can reach even 5 to 10 kids that have no connection to the school outside of, they know they have to go to class every day, then it'll be a benefit.
So it's like consensus to keep gathering more information.
Yep.
Yes.
Bring back more
Better
structured,
answers to that.
detailed information.
Awesome.
Outstanding, thank you. All right, our next discussion item is the ACT and post-secondary results.
And Mr. McDivitt will jump in and help me with this. He and I have been doing this report once a year to the Board of Education for over 10 years. So this is a yearly thing. I don't think I've ever not wanted to follow. That's a hard act to follow. But I do think we can make a connection between getting kids involved and having the incentive to kids to have school be something that they have more investment in. But this is our ACT report. So if we could just have the agenda back up and the.
Share screen.
I can. So I'm going to go to the second page first, but what I gave you was a page of data from the class of 2011 through 2021, and there's a lot of data there. So you can see the percent of the class that was tested each year. Thank you, Bryce. And then you can see the composite scores and then broken down by subject to the English, the math, the reading scores. And then at the bottom half of the page, you've got our science scores. And then when the font starts to turn bold, those are the percents of the kids that met the CRBs, which is
College readiness.
college readiness benchmarks. that they set a certain level, ACT does, that says that the kids are going to be successful at a certain level if they meet it. So that's the raw scores, just so you can look at it yourself. The second page, go one more page, Bryce. This page is just us kind of summing up what's happened over the 10 years, how we compare over the state and how we compare to the nation with our averages, but then also with our CRBs. So you've had a chance to look at that. So Bryce, if we'll go back to the first page now. Some notes that we've made from that data. And I know you've had a chance to see this. So I don't need to read through the whole thing, but the class of 2021 is only the second class that's being given the opportunity to take it for free. And as you could tell from the percent, it really did raise the percent this time. It didn't last year, but this year it did. So 86% of the class took it, which is much higher. And that's what the state wanted. And that did happen. And we thought that if more kids take it, we didn't know what effect that was going to have, or if that even would have any effect on our averages. But as you could see from the scores, the trend is at all levels, local level, state and national, that the ACT composite averages for the last 2 years are the lowest they've been. I mean, they've dropped. And universities now in Kansas do not use the ACT as a criteria for entrance. That was started last year for the first time. And KU was the lone holdout on that, but even they have now taken ACT off the entrance requirements. So now there are no ACT entrance requirements to a Kansas university. Now their ACT plays a part in lots of different scholarships, but not in terms of entrance. It's all GPA now. So, you know, how does that play in? The effect of the pandemic, you know, we've got to think about what that did. This is on the class of 2021. So when they were juniors, they didn't have on-site class for the last 9 weeks. And then last year as seniors, some of them were remote all year. And we had, you know, kids going in and out with illness. So
Don't you think too, though, that before previously it was only a select group of kids who wanted to take it, so you had a much smaller pool of kids who were motivated to take it for a specific reason. So comparing where we're at now to those previous scores, I think is not an accurate point of data, because now everybody's taking it, so it waters the score down. The score is going to come down because everybody's taking it now, as opposed to a selective few who took it for a motivated reason, college entrance or for a scholarship. So to me, it makes sense that our scores went down, and this is now our benchmark to start comparing to how we do in the future. And there is some ties to ACT and state assessment readiness and that they're
well, the
trying to
thing
do.
that they weren't sure about was that if there were kids that could score very well, but they weren't taking it because of financial reasons. So it wasn't a given that because more kids took it, it was going to go down. I don't think anybody really knew, because there was two theories about that. The other theory is that there were kids who could have done really well and they just didn't take it because it's expensive. So, you know, but again, I don't know, is 2 years a trend? That's the thing. And there's some other factor. There's a factor here that I didn't write in the notes, and that is, you know, we have spent more energy and focus on social emotional learning than we have on academic standards the past even 4 years. I mean, I'm talking we local, we state, you know, everybody has spent more time on social emotional and I don't know what, and that's in response to a need. I mean, we couldn't not do that because our culture and our student population has a definite need for that. but does that play into it? So Aaron alluded to the tie between state assessments and ACT, and I think this is where I have the most concerns. Our 10th grade state assessment is, they've done the statistics that it's a predictor on how kids are going to do on the ACT. Well, you've got to score at levels 3 or 4 on the state assessment to hit a college readiness benchmark is what they found the correlation between. And so we right now, well, you can see I've got it in this list. The 10th grade, the class of 2021, when they were sophomores, they did not as a group hit level 3 as a group. They were below level 3. You might raise it just a tiny bit, Bryce. And of course, the class of 2022, they didn't even take a 10th grade state assessment because that was during the shutdown. And then the class of 2023, last year's sophomores, they did not score at level 3 either. So I think, and even dropped in ELA. So my concern is in the classroom, if we are teaching to the levels that we need to be teaching. Now, the pandemic, has it affected that? Yes, it has.
Kelly, what time of year do they take the state assessments?
Right now, April.
Right now. So the 10th grade class of 2021 would have taken them after shutdown or before is what I'm.
After, they would have had a shutdown as June at, no.
Because we didn't go back
Before.
after spring break.
No,
So
they
they
took
would
it
have,
before.
okay,
They took it before.
so they. were
Yeah,
able
so
to
it wouldn't have
before.
affected them.
Okay.
Right. So some perspective in terms of instruction. I mean, we have some things happening. The first is that we are now required to screen kids in reading, and we're doing it in math too at the high school level, which we were not doing at all grade levels. And that has shown us that we do have kids who are not at target in reading or math at 9, 10, 11, and 12. So there's an intervention issue. We have tried for the first time this year to get teachers to work on vocabulary and comprehension across all subjects in the building. And really, that's the only way I think you're going to be able to address this is it's going to have to be a whole, combined effort. It isn't just the ELA and the math teachers. We have some things about student voice that we know that we need to listen to more, and we'll be talking about that going forward. And we need to have the discussion about instruction and student work, and if it's at level 3, which is defined, and we have rubrics and all that to say what that is. So those are, I don't know, Mr. McDivitt, anything you want to add?
One of the other things that we haven't emphasized over the last couple of years, and we maybe ought to revisit it, but it's also because of the nature ordinance is ACT preparation specific to that. There's a strategy that's different with the ACT than there certainly is with state assessments, one being time. ACT
It's time, but the state assessment is not.
And our kids are acclimated, and most standardized tests or tests they take with state assessments aren't. Now that's just one piece. So it could be for us to actually focus on some there's all sorts of people, organizations that do ACT prep work, and it usually has a cost to it. And you also have to have students that wish to do that. In other words, so those are some things we may look at for the future that might be of interest to just expose kids to the strategy of utilizing and doing well on the ACT as well. So I think that would be beneficial as well.
Do those scores reflect if a kid took it again, or is that the first time score, or is that their best score?
This is their last
Their
score.
last score.
Their last score.
And see, that changed too.
Also is different than what's been they used to, at least according to the way I received before, it used to be best. And it's the most recent one.
And now colleges are doing super scoring, which is
Right.
another
Right.
thing, because, when our kids took it, if your reading was high and your math was low, then you took it again and your reading dropped and your math went up. which set are you gonna take? But now they can take the highest of any time they took it.
Which will also affect the composite when students choose to focus on a particular portion of it. Keep in mind, their composite may not reflect their efforts because the kids' focus may very well be on the segment they need to get a better score in. Does that make sense? So there's some different strategies. There's some variables that are happening now that even if we make some changes, we'll have to see how, it will take a few years to figure out. Certainly, we're concerned about it enough. We need to maybe rethink some of the ways we're preparing our kids for the ACT.
So what is the future
Well,
of the
that's not the
ACT?
whole thing. To
Well-
me, it's not the whole thing. I mean, in this report is about the ACT, but if they were doing well on the state, if they were doing levels over level 3 on the state assessment and then doing poorly on the ACT, you know what I mean? I would say that's the problem. But because we have both happening, I don't know. That's
Well,
what I don't
and
know.
Kelly, that had me thinking, as I was listening, and I wrote down the question earlier today, is would an ACT prep course actually address this issue? Because as I'm listening to what you're saying and what you're not saying, it feels a bit, or a hunch, I guess, is that it feels a bit more systemic than just performance on the ACT, because you also mentioned instruction and intervention, and that we know at 9, 10, 11, and 12, the scores were below expected benchmarks. And so that just has me thinking about just something a little bit more systemic than just an ACT prep course. And possibly that could help. I don't know. It just has me wondering if that's the short win or the long-term solution.
Well, I agree with that, because I think the more you put into prepping to take a test, are we taking away from core work that might strengthen the other area?
No doubt, no doubt.
And again, in 2 years of data, I don't know if it's the, but I don't want to wait and not get concerned. And then we have 3 years worth of data, you know what I mean, in another class. And so, yeah, it's definitely got our attention.
It almost seems like part of our discussion probably needs to be too, is what the future of the ACT is maybe unknown. Our focus probably should be on the state assessments in the core, and then the ACT becomes the byproduct of an increase based on that work. Because now what the future of the ACT, some kids may not even choose to take it if they're going to a Kansas school, because there's no need unless they're looking for a scholarship specific to that.
That's true.
Is there any way we can eliminate any of the variables to where we could tell if it's a trend next year? Because right now,
There's a lot of
really
variables.
hard to tell.
There are. Well, to get the pandemic over is huge. I mean, to get that over, and so our focus and attention can be back on,
So this might be a stupid question, so bear
Okay.
with me. But at the elementary level, we had talked a few board meetings ago where we could show how the kids were behind when they came back to in-person learning, and how we could show how they made those incredible gains. Is there any way at a high school level that you can see that kind of data, or is state assessments really the only way to monitor? Like, I'm just wondering if
No, we
these
can't.
kiddos, if they're just not quite caught up because they haven't had the time needed.
Well, we can, this is the first year of really trying to get MTSS in place at the junior, senior high school. And so we don't have the weekly progress monitoring data, enough of it to show the kind of growth that we can show at the elementary. We need to have more regular.
You're really talking two different buckets there.
That's
The
what
intervention
I
bucket, where it's just
assumed that.
the old Ames Web would now be Pass Bridge, which we do that diagnostic testing that's prescriptive, versus the state assessment, which is totally, they fit together. They're prescriptive, they kind of predict each other, but they're two separate beasts, two separate entities.
Right. So the kids that are in interventions at 9, 10, 11, and 12, we just plain need more data on them. That's a short answer to your question. But yes, they are related, and we will be able to tell. We just need more data on them.
It's not as simple as this, but it almost seems like, we've got an academic triangle of state assessments, our core work, and our interventions. And then the product, the ACT becomes a product of the success of those three things.
That's a good way of summing it up.
You know, the ACT really doesn't fit in that triangle. It's just a product of what the success of those things are.
And the ACT is also very, very dependent on what courses you take. So, but again, if you're not at levels 3 and 4, you're not taking those upper level math courses. So it also is very dependent on kids taking a rigorous.
So it has to do with how good of a test taker you are too.
Well,
So
and
the
there's no other
ACT.
test they go take that's all day long in time. That's the ACT is the
The
first
time,
one they do.
his point about the time is our kids do not handle the time tests very well because they don't practice it.
And that's the downfall. I mean, there's some schools, I think ours is still optional. You can sign up to take it, it's free, but there's some schools who require it to be taken. Everybody takes it regardless. And so that really, you get a kid who doesn't want to take it, they go in there and just blow it off. And then you get the kids who really want to try. And then that's why I asked the question about the best score, the last score, because those kids who don't care and don't want to take it, but were forced to take it, you're going to get their last score, which is their worst score, versus the kid who took it. Oh, now I see what it's like. Now I know what it's like to go sit for 3 hours and take a test. I'm gonna take it again, my score's gonna go up.
For most of them, the kids that are really serious about getting an ACT score, this junior level test is not the last time. It's their
It's a
practice.
practice.
And then they'll take it.
See what class they need
Yeah.
to take as a senior to strengthen that.
And where they're at in their try when they take it in their math
Yes.
courses is huge. I mean, there's
It's
algebra 2 is primarily, most of our kids are not in that track to take algebra 2 by the time they're junior, by the time they take that. They've been in geometry or so forth. They're getting ready for algebra 2. but unless
They
they're-
really need trig for the
Need trig,
ACT, yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna ask, what time of year are we still doing this? February,
Mhm.
so,
It's
That's
early.
state,
Yeah.
that's a state one.
Yeah, so
Right.
when you have
Yeah.
kids that are in first trimester, algebra 2, they don't have half the stuff.
right,
And that's
Right.
needed.
right.
So that's why it's more of a practice test, in my opinion, junior year.
So those are all the things that we're talking about. Now, some better news, if you go to that very last page, Bryce, that's horizontal, the post-secondary report. The graph on post-secondary results. This is on the class of 2019. Remember, this graph is the one that's 2 years lagged, that they watch what's happening to the kids 2 years out of school. And the yellow one is graduation rate and the dark blue is our effective average. The orange is the success average. The success average are the I'm gonna say it backwards. One of them is all the kids who entered as ninth graders, and the other one is the kids who graduated. I think blue is graduated. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So this is what kids are still in college, 2 years out, or they already earned their certificate, or they already graduated with an associate's degree. So what percent of that class is still engaged, or they've already earned their license, a license? So of the graduating class, 56.7%, which our trend is up. And the big thing is the light blue box at the bottom, the confidence interval. We need our dark blue bar to be within that interval, and we're actually above it. So we are outperforming what we're expected to do based on our socioeconomic and mobility of our kids. We're outperforming, we're doing better what this class did. So we want the blue, well, we want all of them to be trending up, and they are. Overall, if you do a trend line, it's going up. So that was great news, because these are pandemic kids too. I mean, these are kids that had to start college in the pandemic, and a lot of them had a really hard time with that. But we have over half the class that either got a license or is still in school, and that's awesome. So that's good news. Oh, very good.
There's a lot of work being done behind the scenes at the high school,
Yes, there
especially the
is.
elementary schools have done a lot of work and now are starting to have a new norm that they're maintaining and progressing in the high schools, doing a lot of work to start a new MTSS process that will help with a lot of this.
But there, I think one of the biggest takeaways is there are a lot of variables to this. And what we have to do is try to figure out which ones move the needle the most.
Kelly, I really appreciate you saying that because the foundational piece here is that we're teaching the standards at a rigorous level. And so that's the one thing that doesn't change.
Thank you.
All right, other questions, comments? Thank you for all this. This is a ton of work to get all this put together, but it is appreciated. Next item, graduation promotion assignments. We don't necessarily have to do anything with that tonight. I think it's on here. If you've got something you want to do, just send Bryce an email next week or so and he'll get you put on.
So all board members are welcome to attend and sit on stage and be part of the graduation ceremony. But if there's some, I think in the past, like maybe as you hand out diplomas, obviously if you have a student graduating or something, you want to be part of that and then make sure we get it lined up so you're handing your child their diploma and those things. So.
Yep. Yeah, so if you want to be a part of that, just let Bryce know. Next item is filling the position on the board. Aaron, you want to go through that? You want me?
Sure, I can just kind of give a quick overview and then you can kind of dive into it. So as a board, obviously we're a 6-member board right now. So as per statute, you have some options on how you fill that. And so we need to notify the paper and get a publication in if you're going to fill it via an application process where people can turn in a desire to sit on the board and then have a day where a board meeting where you bring them in and conduct an interview, question and answer session, so forth, and then pick a person that you want to sit on the board. So realistically, for a timeline wise, if we want to hold that at the May meeting so they could sit in June, we would need to get that notice in the paper immediately and give a timeline for when those applications need to be turned in so they can be given to you all to review before that meeting. So it just all depends on the timeline for what the board wishes to fill it with.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, that's kind of the timeline that I had in my head was to kind of do it that way. Just so that the new person will come in June. That's kind of the start of the next rotation the next year. Not bringing somebody in, for May when things are crazy with everybody anyway. So, kind of, I guess where my head was going was we get that put in the paper, give people about 3 weeks to submit their desire to be on the board, ask them to come to our next board meeting where we can interview them, pepper them with questions, whatever the case may be. And then we actually, as the board, would vote on that person to fill that position. From personal experience, I will say it can be a tie vote, up to 3 votes for some of us. Again, that awkward silence time when that happened. It's fine. It's okay.
You're here now. You're here now.
Not there.
He's forgotten all about it.
Yeah. It is.
Like
It is.
happened.
I'm throwing it out there though, because it does create, with a 3-3 thing, it can be kind of an odd thing. And hard to break. I do think it's important. We did look up the statute. We don't have to put somebody in this position. We can wait till the next election. But I think that's shortchanging our community. I think the community deserves to have a full board of 7 people sitting on it. For anybody that is listening and is interested, this position is for Council Grove and South. Those maps are out there on the website. I believe it's the city limits of Council Grove going west, basically down, or east, I'm sorry, basically down Highway 56 and then everything south. So if there's somebody out there that is interested in serving on this board, being a part of the future of this district and lives in that area, absolutely love to have you fill out the application form if that's the direction we want to go as far as filling this. But those are my thoughts. So I'll be quiet and sit back.
Well, the nice thing about the June timeline too is that we'll close out the fiscal year in June, so that will give kind of a trial by fire snapshot of what happens financially to the district. And in July, obviously, we bring in the new fiscal year and new budget process, and so it'll be part of that too, to learn about how the budget process works, which is honestly probably the most important thing overall for a board member to understand is the budget process.
So our next meeting will be. Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, sorry, I just was gonna ask a question. If we move forward and we decide we want to open it up for applications, would that be something that the district could help us promote a little bit, at least like the map of the area for that board member? I know I'm struggling to envision it.
Yeah, no, we would put the district would put a publication in the paper. I would detail all that information out with the process and who's eligible and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that map's already built. I think it's on our website, but we get that out there to folks, and I think we've got plenty of help there.
Yeah.
Our next board meeting is May 9th. So if we were to say, have applications turned in by the end of the day, May 2nd, that's a week before. That would give us a little time to review those applications. And by an application, I'm thinking.
A letter of interest.
Yeah, basically, yes, I do live in the correct area, and here's why I'm interested.
Here's my background, here's what here's why I'm interested.
We don't want to do anything
Here's
that's
my
going to
intent.
make it difficult for people to be interested. So anyway, if that's the way we want to go, that seems to make some sense to me, but I get it that doesn't always make sense in the world.
Terry, I agree with you. I think you're making perfect sense tonight. Glad to hear that, right?
A little hungry.
But I had a question. And I want you to remind me what our opportunities are, or what can we, I guess, if we know someone living in that area, as board members, can we reach out? Tell me what the rules are around that, please.
I don't think there are any. I think we should absolutely feel empowered to go reach out to people, because to my knowledge, there hasn't been 10 people standing at the front door asking to be on this at this point. And there's been times that we've had to truly go ask people if they'd be interested in running. And I would guess most of us here had somebody ask us if we'd be interested in running at some point. So I think we should absolutely be out in front of that. And if there's somebody that you've got in mind, absolutely go have that conversation.
Yeah, there's no restrictions statutorily about what you can and cannot do as a board member for this. Yeah. It's not like an election process for a bond where we can't be part of a yes committee or a no committee. It's not like that.
A good question.
Yeah.
Is there any way we could have KSB pull up like 10 questions for us that would then be questions that we could ask of?
Like an interview question. Absolutely.
Because I mean, I know that all the questions have to be asked to all the candidates in the same format, the same questions, those kind of things. So that would alleviate that.
Kind of give a script.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thoughts, questions, concerns?
So run through your timeline again. May 9th, our board meeting. So
May 9th board meeting, have applications by 5 o'clock on May 2. Okay, so I made perfect sense for a minute. Let me see if I can muddy the water.
Statute guidelines for the post in the paper.
it's 15 days. So as long as we get it posted, yeah.
Okay.
My preference would we'd try to do that live. I mean, in person.
Right.
I would like those candidates to be here. I just think it makes it easier and cleaner for everyone rather than trying to do that virtually.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll put that as a stipulation that on May 9th, there will be required to be here in person.
Yep.
For interview.
And that will just be part of our regular board meeting. That will just be a item on the agenda. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other thoughts, concerns with that, Marie or Mary? Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we've got a plan then, and we'll just move forward with that. And see what happens. Next item is for an executive session for personnel.
And for this one, if we could have Heather and Kelsey in,
How long?
just 5 minutes.
Okay.
You heard that right, right?
Well, it's,
Mr. President, I move we go into an executive session to discuss an individual employee's performance pursuant to non-elected personnel exemption under coma with Mr. Doty, the board, Mrs. Honus, and Mrs. Bremer for 5 minutes.
there won't be any action on this one. There will be.
Thank you.
Executive session.
Yeah.
She did.
Moved and seconded. We have a 5-minute executive session for personnel. Any discussion on that item? All in favor, raise your right hand.
And give me time to log out before you start the 5-minute clock.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Mom.
Sorry. We needed to.
Ding, ding, that's the cat where they,
I just get so
the
nervous.
cat where they
when
hit the button and get fed.
Say something about